Welcome to The Why. In our podcast, The Why, we're going to cover topics that are important to SAP customers and to our team. We want you to share this information internally. We want you to share this information outside of SAP Ariba. And we want you to be able to connect with other thought leaders in our business. This week, our podcast, The Why, is at SAP Ariba Live in Amsterdam, which is the place to be for business-to-business commerce. Joining me today on our podcast, The Why, is Sean Thompson, the Global Head of Business Development and Ecosystems for SAP Ariba. Sean, thank you for joining us today on The Why.
Good morning, SAP Ariba.
Fantastic. Let's start. The podcast is called The Why. Talk a little bit about why our partners and our ecosystem are critical for our customers and for our success going forward.
Thanks, John. Yeah, the background here is that I spent about 20 years in the SAP ecosystem. So I've been an SI with SAP, and I've also been a technology partner in Microsoft. And
so
I come in with a DNA of ecosystem-led approach to growth, especially in what I learned at Microsoft, because Microsoft was always focused on the software economics and not on service economics, et cetera.
Right.
Now, I came in, though, to Ariba in January as Barry's wingman. So Barry Paget and I go back in time, and I came in as his wingman. And I didn't know what, in terms of the function that we needed at Ariba in terms of how do we grow. But it became pretty obvious in the review of our P&L that we're growing services faster than software. And as a software provider, that is not a good sort of economic decision.
Not the recipe you want, right?
That's right. And then secondly, we, in the great, problem to have in terms of the growth that we've had in the last 3 years, we've taken on a lot of what I'll call technical debt, co-innovation, roadmap commitments that we've made. And so our ability to deliver on those roadmap commitments have us limited in terms of where do we go from here. So the business model that I would call that's been historically a fairly insular business model. We deliver most of the services, or in terms of the past, we thought of partners in the services side as more competitor than partner. And we haven't really thought of leveraging an ecosystem to drive innovation. Open up an API or two, and then let third parties, take us to places we never knew we could go as a platform provider.
Right.
And so when you look at the business imperative that we have within Ariba, and you ask yourself, how do we get from 1 billion in cloud recurring revenue to 2 to 3? There's only one way, and that is to take an ecosystem-led approach to growth. So there's a business imperative that we have within Ariba that you can't ignore anymore. We can no longer ignore the fact that we have to take and we have to culturally change the way that we think and act and breathe with an ecosystem-led approach.
Yeah, makes sense.
The second thing is that the why is that very few companies can speak about ecosystem, use the word ecosystem, and very few companies can use the word platform because it's a privilege. It's not a right. A lot of, I've come from the startup world, and in the startup world, in the VC world, a lot of people that have a business idea, they say we want to be a platform. It's always everybody's dream.
Right.
But very few companies have the privilege, and we have market relevance that has us with third parties knocking on our door, wanting in. And so market relevance is what you need in order to even think about an ecosystem, which means that partners want to join because there's profit in it for them. And that's because there's a vast market that was represented by the fact that Ariba has established very good market presence. We've got the 2,500 buyers and the 3+ million suppliers, and that's relevance. And so we've got an ecosystem that are knocking on our door, wanting in. And now we need to open up and embrace them and give them a big hug, because we want, in our partner ecosystem, we want the thousands of people out there waking up every day helping carry the Ariba water.
Right.
Because for us, that's all goodness in terms of what it means for us in terms of the platform economics.
That's fantastic.
The third one is the customer, the buyer, or the supplier. Is that if we're gonna satisfy buyers and suppliers, then we can't do it all on our own, and we've got to think about, for them, how do we drive value, and it's value through an ecosystem-led approach that gives us, our buyers, especially on the buyer side, the the option to have good delivery partners, the option to have an app center that's full of third-party extensions that they can choose from to add value to what we've got, or the suppliers in terms of when they join the network,
right,
the services that we provide to the supplier. So there's a goodness in the buyer and supplier side as well.
Fantastic. As you're talking to the partners, right, and talking to potential new partners, what's been the reaction so far to this message? Is it, we've heard this before, or are they generally super excited about this opportunity?
So it's a very good question. Here at Ariba Live Amsterdam, this was the debut of the,
Right.
here we go ecosystem message, right? With
Yep.
with a loud and proud voice. And I've
Right.
sort of what I've picked up is that people are like, thank you. Everybody's, saying from a customer perspective, buyers, the suppliers, but the partners are saying thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have heard it before,
Sure.
but we are hearing it this time in a consistent voice. So we had an analyst panel that you and I were on, John, and
Sure.
and it was awesome for me to go last in that panel because everybody that went before me, Sudhir talked about open API ecosystem. Chris Hayden talked about the partners that are needed to drive customer value
Right.
and us getting out of the way. And then you talked about the suppliers and the network and the ecosystem. And so by the time it got to me, I wasn't the guy talking ecosystem. It was everybody else before me. And so that people have heard
Right.
consistently across the leadership team. And of course, Barry is the biggest voice and the megaphone that he carries.
Absolutely.
Is very consistent. So I've gotten a lot of hugs and honestly, and high fives.
Right.
Now we just got to deliver on it.
Right. That's a great welcome. So you talked a little bit in your opening about the fact that there are some parts of the ecosystem, and I think people get, which are probably a little traditional, right? It's the SIs. It's we need our help with our customers need help with the whole transformation, right? But we're also talking about solution innovation, product innovation, bringing new things to the network, bringing new things to the apps that help connect companies together in new ways. What are some of the exciting things that are being talked about this week, or some of the exciting things that you're talking about with some of our partners?
Yesterday I had a panel on the main stage, and it was first of all to sort of shout out to say that ecosystem matters. Here's why. And then I invited 3 friends up on stage, and it was so interesting for me to go through each one of them because they all represent in their own way
Yep.
a really interesting value extension of what we do. So Absolute, award-winning partner that is an interesting one because they're a traditional SAP ERP partner. They've got a long history of doing ERP. They've got a long history of doing the supplier relationship management, SRM.
Exactly.
And they've been Ariba now. And they've been a procurement company that has delivered 300 procurement implementations, regardless of which vendor, regardless of which product.
Right.
And so they bring to the table a tremendous amount of knowledge about what works, what doesn't work, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then they also bring the change management element. And so they do what we don't, what we could never do, which is understanding how do you drive change management and how do you drive business process.
Exactly.
And so being able to talk with Absolute on stage and declare, here's why the customers should appreciate the fact that we are including people like Absolute in our ability to deliver value because
Right.
they do things better than we do to a large degree. And so it's nice to be able to give them an award, showcase them as a great delivery partner.
Right.
And then Celonis was the next one. And this was, in the category of the, I call it the intellectual property extensions of the platform, the solution extensions, hardened products, if you will, that
Right.
integrate with Ariba and drive value. And in their case, they do something that's really interesting and near and dear to my heart as an old ERP guy and business process guy.
Right.
They reach into Ariba and they look at the process of procurement and then they drive process intelligence. And so they can tell customers what transactions follow a standard path or which ones have exceptions. And so a procurement organization can then say, why do we have so many exceptions to this workflow? Let's look at that and then drive more efficiency in the process. And so Celonis is a fantastic partner in that regard.
That's a great example.
And then the third one I think is near and dear to you, the network guy and the guy who carries the supplier banner on behalf of the company,
Yep.
is the fact that we've got these third parties that are adding value to the supplier and driving supplier intelligence. And in the case of Semantic Visions,
Right.
they do this really interesting big data. So they scrape the web, if you will, gather all the data.
Right.
And then they pour through semantically where are the suppliers being mentioned, and then provide that back to the buyers and the suppliers in terms of here's what's being talked about you. So
right.
you can, monitor your own, if you will, social chatter out there through Semantic,
Right.
or the buyer can manage their suppliers. And so it's a great value proposition on both sides.
That's fantastic. The team is global, right? I assume our partner ecosystem is expanding globally. Are there certain regions that are really going to ramp up, or is it all regions as far as partner activity this year?
It's good news is it's global.
Right.
And there is no exception. Go around each region and you see an ecosystem led approach to both the demand as well as our ability to leverage the fact that we have decent presence from SAP's perspective in terms of ERP. We've got an ecosystem that is there for the taking in terms of the good news about procurement.
Right.
It's very, very closely associated with ERP. That's why our S4 message
Right.
is so interesting in terms of you go into a traditional SAP partner and procurement is not a foreign thing to them. So our ability to leverage that on a global basis and build out the Ariba specific ecosystem
Right.
is a global, and no region will be left behind.
Right. Well, this is super exciting. Maybe one final question: as the sales teams, as the delivery teams, customer teams, and supplier teams engage with your organization, what advice would you have? Is there any topic that's they shouldn't cover, or where should they go to help? How do they continue to get engaged and bring the partners into our customer success and our innovation plans?
It's a great question, because I think that I mentioned this in the beginning, is that culturally we within Ariba have to change the way we think and we act.
Right.
And historically I see a lot of examples of where partners have either been an afterthought or a competitor, and we haven't let them in. And so I hope everybody understands the business imperative that we within Ariba, if you're an Ariba employee, you win if you put ecosystem first.
Right.
Because we all enjoy greater profitability, if you will.
Right.
And growth. So culturally, put partners first in your mind in terms of help them help us. And so if you're a salesperson, include the delivery partner that could really make a difference in the
Right.
bid, so that we can talk about change management and the fact that we've got great delivery partners that do more than we do, and complement what we do. If you're in the CVO organization, if you're in services, embrace partners, because you have an important role to play.
Right.
Our services need to support partners. So think about getting into the back seat, but become the tiger team, where you're doing QA for partners because
Sure.
they need you.
Absolutely.
And then also you're doing things like the tiger team of services that are in some of our immature or less mature products as
that are just
we
coming out,
enter
right.
them into the market. And so there's a tiger team, very important strategic role that our own consulting teams need to provide. Don't treat partners as competitors. Think of them as your ability to extend what we do.
Extension
and
of
reach.
yourself, right?
Yeah. And then if you're in development, listen to what Sudhir is saying, is that historically we haven't thought with an API-led approach to innovation.
Sure.
We've always wanted to build our own stuff.
Right.
Let's stop building everything and let's declare what's core and what's core in the platform. And then let's open up APIs so that we get third parties that extend what we do so that we get greater reach. And so that's the imperative that I have to the dev team, the P&I team,
Right.
is that APIs matter. And if you're on the dev team, it's a wonderful thing to be involved with the transformation of a product development team that is primarily an app to a platform. And that journey for your resume is a wonderful thing to embrace, because that's the way of the future. And so APIs on the dev team, we need them. And we on the business development and ecosystem team will recruit ISVs to consume them, but we need the API
Perfect.
first.
Exactly. Well, great. Well, Sean, thank you for joining us today on our podcast, The Why, and it's very exciting to see this part of our business really take our company to the next level. So thank you very much.
Thanks, John. This is great. I started off with a little bit of Good Morning SAP Ariba, and it was based on Good Morning Vietnam, when Robin Williams is my hero. So thank you for making me feel like I've been a little bit of Robin Williams today.
Absolutely. Welcome to the team.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Our Our podcast, The Why, is put together by the People First team. We'll be producing The Why on a regular basis. If you have recommendations for topics, please contact the People First team. And please share this podcast with other members of our team or even outside our team. Thank you for listening to The Why.